Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Washington. We're talking to Dan down in the Southland. We're just going through the Ohio referendum, right? 61-39. The American people want to be able to organize trade unions. They reject the union-busting plans of all Republicans, and I mean all, without exception. This is New Deal America. And when you notice, if the cause gets 61% and Obama gets 40%, it means that the burden of a failed Wall Street puppet like Obama or Pelosi or any of these people, you're giving 20% to the reactionaries to carry along Obama. Dump Obama, and you'll get back up to 60%. The other poll that impressed me this week, 75% of Americans feel that the U.S. economy is rigged in favor of the rich. Now, that's a very primitive level of understanding. Really, any peasant should know that, but often they don't, right? Because they've been listening to Rush Limbaugh. But 75-25, that's the actual relation between pro-New Deal and reactionary. And it's precisely these Democratic politicians like Obama that make all these wonderful defeats possible. So Obama is dead weight, and Dan is championing the primary Obama now. So Dan, 46 million on food stamps, correct?
Absolutely, and again, that was the last statistic I was going to throw out. And you actually have increases in these programs right now because of the economic crisis. We're in a global depression, and Ron Paul's response is to say taxation is theft. And so we shouldn't tax derivatives. We shouldn't tax hedge funds. In fact, there's a couple more things to go over. He wants to cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%, eliminate the capital gains tax. Imagine how Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan feel about that. Wants to extend the Bush tax cuts, eliminate the estate tax. This is monstrous, and people need to understand that when you're talking about cutting taxes for the wealthiest and the hedge funds, and then saying we're going to cut what remains of the New Deal, and to treat those as a coincidence, it's not. This is regressive economics, and people need to face up to this. And for Ron Paul to stand out there and say, well, all of this is okay because then I present an audit of the Fed, which is very, very milquetoast, which we already know what the Fed is doing. A real plan would be to nationalize it, but you don't hear Ron Paul talk about that. We need to face up to what Ron Paul is, which is a fraud, and his economics would kill people in this country. And my article is going to cover this, and I hope to promote it in the next few weeks. But I wanted to go over these numbers. A few more things, Webster, that, in terms of the polling. There was a Wenzel WorldNet Daily poll conducted on October 22nd to the 25th. 35% of Democrats want someone else to challenge Obama, which comes on the heels of the AP poll, AP Knowledge Networks poll, which found 47% of Democrats believe Obama should be challenged. That's why you see this disparity that is still New Deal America. Remember the poll that Wall Street Journal, NBC News did back in June where they said even Tea Party supporters by a nearly 2-to-1 margin find cuts to Social Security unacceptable. So even within the reactionary groups, they don't want cuts to Social Security. Just to give people a couple things they can do this week, if you want to go out and promote a good bill, Representative Peter DeFazio and Senator Tom Harkin are pushing H.R. 419, the Let Wall Street Pay for the Restoration of Main Street Act. This is a 0.3% tax on stocks, bonds, and derivatives trade. They are at the G20 right now promoting it. Now, it is true that Bill Gates and a lot of globalists are pushing for this, too. They want to turn it into the Delphic version where it will be used for IMF bailouts, where it will be used for global development, as they call it. But the fact is, if we can get derivatives publicly traded on an exchange, that's the first step to taxing them. And then begins the political battle to use these for rebuilding the United States, not for globalism, not for the IMF, and not for their projects. And people, a lot of the libertarians say, well, if this derivatives tax is so great, then, why would Bill Gates push for it? Remember, the major financial lobbies are apoplectic about this. SIFMA, SIFMA, the ISDA, International Swaps and Derivatives Association, are freaked out about this, and they are saying it will be the end of the world. So at the G20 right now, as DeFazio is presenting this plan, it'll be the end of their world,
but that's the beginning of a new world.
Because what we have is the high-frequency trading that is really dominating about 70+% of it. These are basically zombie computers that trade every millisecond, and it's insider trading on the grandest scale you could imagine. And this is the stuff that needs to be taxed. And that's what primary Obama is all about. And even if we're not able to primary Obama, look, it may or may not happen. What we're trying to build is a progressive coalition. We're trying to recruit candidates for local office, for Congress. We are building a platform here where we say no cuts to Social Security and tax Wall Wall Street. And remember, we're the majority. 80+% of people support a millionaire surtax. We are the majority, and we have to treat ourselves like that. We have to remember we're pushing a program here that saves lives instead of killing them off with the Ron Paul method. Again, there's a huge demand out there, and if you want to get on Twitter, get on Facebook, please help us promote Primary Obama Now. If you want to help promote this Wall Street sales tax, remember, Peter DeFazio is doing it. Call your congressman. Ask him to co-sponsor it, H.R. 419. Webster, anything else?
One last thing. How many people on unemployment benefits right now?
Boy, I'd have to look that up. I just saw that. Give me 1 second.
And it would be interested also to know how many unemployed people have exhausted their unemployed benefits. Right? These would be the 99ers, but sometimes even fewer than 99 weeks, it's exhausted.
And the other thing to remember is that Ron Paul has every time voted to not to extend the unemployment benefits, and so that's the mentality here. He also wanted to cut 270,000 federal jobs, cut 10% of the workforce, while at the same time saying you're not going to get unemployment benefits.
Actually, 440,000 by my calculation. It was 10% of 4.4 million, so 440,000.
Yeah, and another thing I'd like to bring up just before I go is, the Rick Perry moment in the debate, everyone's pointing out how he couldn't remember the third agency to eliminate. Remember, Ron Paul is standing next to him saying, actually, I would eliminate 5 agencies. So he's out Rick Perrying Rick Perry. I mean, and this is why I want people to recognize, you think Ron Paul is different because he says Federal Reserve, but he's not talking about nationalizing it. He's talking about auditing it, and the rest of his economics are eerily similar to Mitt Romney, to the rest of these candidates, and that's what it is. It's typical austerity economics, and that means that the millions of people on these programs, especially the very poor, the children, those who can't defend themselves, are vulnerable. And so we need to face up to this. We need a real primary challenger to Obama. And a lot of the people who support Ron Paul now, you need to be honest with yourself. And just the fact that he promotes himself as anti-war and pro-civil liberties cannot make up for the fact that at the core, his economics are for millionaires, billionaires, and hedge funds.
Yes, and I think you've got to face the economic facts. I mean, look at the implications of those savage cuts, and turn away. There's a better way. Because what do you get at the end of all this? What is the purpose of all of this suffering? So you enter the utopia of the free market that never was on land or sea. Dan, thank you very much. We'll see you next week. Keep going there over at Primary Obama Now. Slow and steady wins the race. He will crater, and we'll be there. And we'll see you soon.
I appreciate it, Webster. Thanks a lot.
Okay. And that's primaryobamanow.com, and you can go and express your preferences there. So we were saying now, what should Europe actually do? A couple of seconds left in this segment. Emergency program, no bailouts, no bank recapitalization. You can forget that. Those are Euro zombies. They've got to be shut down. No cuts, no austerity. No raising of the pension age. No cuts of existing pensions. Italian and Greek pensions are wretched, miserable. You can't have a human life on any of those. They're incompatible with human dignity. No austerity. None of the things that Monti and Papademos regard as axiomatic and which are also being implemented in these other countries. But let's get to the heart of the matter. We've got the authoritative Wall Street Journal telling us the European banking system is being crushed by collateralized debt obligations, and this is, again, the November 7th headline story. European banks own tens of billions of euros of collateralized debt obligations, leveraged loans. It means structured investment vehicles and God knows what. Ban collateralized debt obligations. No more CDOs, no more super CDOs. Even Blankfein entertained this at the hearings in the Senate in May of 2010. Ban credit default swaps. Stop the attack on Italy. Prevent the attack on Spain and France and everybody else using credit default swaps. Realize one thing. Your enemy is not the other country. Your enemy is the international banking cabal, the banksters. You know who they are. The ones that are represented by Papademos and Monti quite directly. We can also apply this program to Canada. We'll continue the program now at the beginning of the next hour. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.